Welcome to the summary of the third turn of 1944. Here are the two cards. The Axis used their special event in the air battle over Berlin. In fact, the icon does not show a fighter unit, but from what I understand is that not all units necessarily show or are restricted to what is being shown on the icon. So, and it says air +1 firepower and not necessarily fighters +1 firepower. So I assume I played that correctly. The other one, the Allies used their special event to bomb the factories in Bavaria, which obviously, when you have 8 dice thrown against you twice, there's not much left of it. So that factory has disappeared as well, which means that in fact the Germans are down to 3 factories and the Italians have 4. Who would have thought such a thing could be possible? But that's exactly what happened. So, and the Germans don't really have any money to rebuild them, any PPs to rebuild them. Of course, they could rebuild 1, and previously they could have rebuilt 2, but, where would they build them? If they place them in Western Germany, they'll be bombed by the Western Allies. If they place them in Eastern Germany somewhere, they might soon be overrun by the Russians. So, I'm just trying to hold on as long as possible with the Germans, which is pretty historical again, I suppose. But, they hardly have any resources or manpower or whatever left. Now, I left the battles just to remember them because there were quite a few again. Well, Battle A was the bombing, the air raid I told you about. Let's go to Battle B. That took place again in Naples, and again the Western Allies were repulsed. They might just try on the next turn to try and land in Florence, and thereby cut off the... they wouldn't cut them off from supply, but it would be enough if they can keep the area up to and including the supply phase. It would be enough to make Italy surrender. So again, this is also, this is a bit further north than happened historically, but of course the Allies did try on several occasions to bypass the strong defenses in mountainous terrain in Italy. Anzio, and I believe the other place was called Salerno, but I'm not entirely sure about that one. But several times they tried to outflank the Allies, and that might be something they're going to try in the next turn. Who knows? Because next turn will be winter in Finland and Russia, but not in the rest of the map. So again, as I said, the Western Allies were repulsed, and subsequently, because some Italians, the fighter and the infantry unit, which is now in Taranto, they reinforced the battle, but the infantry unit regrouped and the air unit landed normally. So that's what happened over there. Yugoslavia was conquered by the Russians. The Germans did come to their aid, but unfortunately for them, the Yugoslavs were wiped out on turn 1, on round 1, which meant that they became the attackers, and that was really too much for them. I believe they lost an infantry unit, maybe even 2, and the fighter managed to retreat to Hungary. The other Russian unit, the Shock Army that you see in Zagreb, it regrouped to Zagreb, which means that the Italians now also have the Russians at their borders. I allowed the Germans to reinforce the battle in Yugoslavia. 10.3 has changed the rules a bit when it comes to neutral powers and everything. But since diplomacy has ended, that is not clearly described in rules 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, somewhere over there. It makes sense to me that the Germans would, if they actually would come to Yugoslavia's aid, that I don't know, but it was in their own interest as well to attack the Russians there. At least that's what I thought. So I allowed it, and I hope someone can help me out with that, whether or not that is in fact allowed. It makes sense to me. So that's what happened over there. D, the Russians took Warsaw. There were 4 German blocks there, but one of them was strength 2, and all the other ones, I believe, were simply strength 1, so they weren't very powerful anymore. Battle E took place in Berlin. The Germans held on to it by reinforcing it as well. One of the reinforcing units is now in the Czech Republic because it regrouped, and the SS unit came from the wooded area on the Belgian border, and it reinforced Berlin from there. And well, they won, and the Russians attacked with some units that are now in Krakow, and the others came from Warsaw, and they blitzed into what was then contested terrain, because as you can see, that was Battle E, the other one was Battle D. So E was yet to be resolved, but I believe I played that right. It's a bit confusing because normally reinforcing is done by player 2, and the Allies, including the Russians, were player 1. But also, if you look at this battle chart that I printed out from Board Game Geek, it also clearly shows that the attacker can have reinforcements, which is, I believe, something that blitzing definitely allows. So I'm pretty sure I played that right. If you disagree, then please let me know. I still do believe that some player aids would have come in very handy. Well, maybe not player aids, but a playbook or definitely some illustrations in the rule book. Not necessarily at the expense of more text, because apparently that's something the designers really didn't want, but a picture here and there really would have helped out. Well, anyway, I digress. Those are battles D and E, and the Germans are still clinging on for dear life. So that was it for the third turn of 1944. Let's see if the fourth one can finally bring an Allied victory. Thanks again for watching.